and I would really appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful southern coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your weekly political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hello, friends and patriots, Coos County, Oregon, and beyond. I want to thank you all for joining me. I've got some really incredible guests, and if you didn't know it, you should know it now. I've got Matt Holman, who's part of 3H Tree Service, and we're going to be playing Where's 3H Tree Service today. Matt, how you doing, man?
Good, Rob. Good. Doing really well.
That's kind of exciting because I heard you were out there cutting down some trees, but you're kind of stationary right now.
Yeah. We got a little bit of work done this morning. Started a big job, and we'll go back tomorrow. But needed to take some time and do some maintenance on some stuff. So we're here and waiting for somebody to come find us.
Hey, let me ask you, what kind of work does it take to keep one of those chippers running? Because, I mean, you guys are throwing like huge stuff in there getting chipped away. How much time do you spend on that thing?
Yes. Well, our chipper only a 12-inch log, so, I mean, if we don't want it, we can usually chip it up. So daily maintenance consists of greasing it, checking the oil, making sure that's good, but the bearings, there's a lot of moving parts in there, so keeping it greased is good. The knives that make the chips, we got to keep an eye on those. That they get dull, and so we got to change them out. That's probably the biggest maintenance issue there, keeping your knives sharp. It makes a better chip, so they're easier to get rid of if people want them, and so it's a lot less work on the machine, too. They don't have to work as hard to chip that stuff up.
So let me ask you, when you go out into a job and you do that chipping, are there people out there, if they wanted the end product of the chipper, do you sell that to them, or do you just, take it out somewhere? What do you do? How can people get that if they wanted that? Can they do that?
The best thing for us, the easiest thing for us to do is to go on chipdrop.com. If the customers want to go on there, they can sign up, and then it'll put a little pin on a map. And if we're working in their area, it's convenient for us to just look on the app. That way I don't have to keep a big database in my phone of people that want wood chips. And if they're around where we're working, we'll hit them up and bring them some wood chips. And that makes it easy for everybody. The municipality line clearance people, the other tree services in town, there's enough people out there that it's a pretty good product. It's a good mulch, weed control. Chips are good, especially with all this rain we've had, a lot of mud. It'll keep down on that if you got animals. So there's a lot of use for it if people want it. Yeah, chipdrop.com.
Wow, I didn't even know that this existed. I was just curious about that. That just blew my mind that you had this whole website and all this stuff, put together. That's really cool. That is so cool. And so people just go to this site and then they can pick up the chip. That's really, how innovative is that?
It's super handy, and it's nationwide. It's all over the country. If you want logs, you can put it on there too, and we can bring you any logs that we have from our job if we're not taking them back to process into firewood. So if you need firewood and we're working, hit us up. We could probably hook you up with a little bit anyway.
Well, that is really cool. I'm glad I asked because I do know people out there who are interested in that, and they have asked me. So I will definitely get that information out soon. I just want to let everyone know that the round has begun with Where's 3H Tree Service. He is in Coos Bay. I'm going to go ahead and give the city away. You're in Coos Bay, and he's not out at a site. He's at a business, so you're going to have to find him and figure out where he's at. And I'm going to give you the rules here. Let's see. When the round starts, the first person to find Matt Holman of 3H Tree Service will win the grand prize, which is $50. The playing area covers all of Coos County, but I just told you he's in Coos Bay, so that really narrows it down. There will only be one winner per round. The round ends when we have a winner or when announced on the Rob Taylor Report podcast. People who are ineligible to win the prize include family employees of 3H Tree Service, anyone involved in hiring or contracting with 3H Tree Service, anyone who is a known criminal in Coos County, Oregon, and anyone who has won a round of Where's 3H Tree Service in the last 30 days. So, he'll be working on machinery, so you may want to check him out. I know I've probably given a lot of clues away, but sometimes, look at there, cashola. That's right, cashola. You want to pick it up, and Matt's going to be happy to give it away because it definitely helps out a lot of people out there who are in the need. So, Matt, I'm going to let you go. If you get a winner, take a picture for me and come back on.
Okay, let me throw this out there, Rob. We didn't have a winner last week, so I passed that on to this week. So there's $100, and if you know where 3H hangs out in Isthmus Heights, come find us up there. So that should help.
All right. So you're not really in the city of Coos Bay then, right?
No, we're in the county at our other place of business.
Other Isthmus Heights is the clue. All right. Perfect. Come back on when you get a winner, okay?
Will do, Rob. Thanks.
All right, man. You take care. And I've got joining me for today's guest, I've got an incredible man. I've been trying to get him back on here because the first time I interviewed him, the audio just really sucked. And he deserves much better than that. And I know you, the audience, deserves much better than that. And of course, I'm talking about Dr. Bob Zybach. Bob, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Rob. Good to see you.
It is good to see you. It's good to finally get you on here and be able to talk to you because that last interview just wasn't deserving of everything you put into it. And I know you've been working a long time on this specific issue, specifically the Elliott Forest, the history of the forest, the history of the area. You're a writer, you're a researcher, you're a photographer. I was checking out some of your photography. I mean, just incredible. You were born in 1948 in Woodland, Washington, raised a family and operated a successful reforestation business from Eddyville, Oregon for 20 years. You earned your environmental sciences PhD from the Oregon State University, Corvallis, Oregon in 2003, bachelor's degree in forest recreation, master's in oral histories, and PhD in historical ecologist. And most of your research and writing has focused on the human and landscape history of Oregon over the past 15,000 years, and particularly the past 500 years. Your principal topics are forest and fire history, which I've been studying a lot on, so I hope we can go through a lot of that. The Oregon Trail, Indian and Black communities and individuals, endangered species habitat, and reforestation planning. You're a busy man. How do you find the time, Bob?
I'm 75 years old, so you can get a lot done over time.
So, would you be considered an old growth tree if you were in the forest?
Yeah, but I think the way they're defining it, anybody over 25 is defined as old growth these days.
That was a hard thing I was trying to figure out from another lady who I had on the show. She's working with the forest bridges. Her name is Denise Barrett. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Denise Barrett, but she's a little bit more of an environmentalist than I am, but I like to have people of different and diverse opinions on the show. And one of the things I kept asking her and tried to pinpoint her on was old growth trees. And I think she kind of got around 150 to 175 years old is what she was saying. I don't know if that's something that is true or not, but like you said, it seems like they keep bringing that down younger and younger, and so and I kind of have a question, because there are a lot of things I want to cover with you, and we got plenty of time, but I did have a question after talking to Denise Barrett. One of the things that she was talking about is how the Indians used to do prescribed burning, and that she believes in the practice of prescribed burning and does not believe in clear cutting. She believes in more what I call designer cutting, taking out trees in specific areas, not taking out all of the trees in one area, and leaving more foliage and not so much a clear cut. And then I asked her, well, what's the difference between that and a prescribed burn? Because in a prescribed burn, if you burn an area, you burn it all down. So my question for you is there anything wrong with doing a prescribed burn versus a clear cut? And is there anything wrong with doing a clear cut? It's kind of a twofold question.
They're two separate things entirely. Let's get back to the old growth question in a bit, but
okay.
Prescribed burning by the Indians, it's like the Willamette Valley. It's grassland. It's not Douglas fir on steep hillsides like the Elliott. Now, the way that nature does it is clear cutting. Mount St. Helens, Columbus Day storm, Coos fire. Look at all the wildfires they had in Douglas County in the last 20 years. Those are clear cuts. The difference is with plantations in that, we put in a lot more fuel out there. And so after an area burns, instead of having 18 or 20 dead trees, we got 150. There's a contiguous fuel load. That's unprecedented. These situations have never occurred before, any more than nature does selective cutting. A prescribed burn requires a certain type of fuels, a certain type of topography. My crews, when I ran a reforestation business, did about 18 or 20,000 acres of prescribed burns. We never had any slop over, and it was done entirely for site preparation. So following a clear cut or a slashing project on a conversion reforestation project, we would treat the fuels and set them on fire, and that left a perfect condition for planting trees. So, but to maintain a forest stand, that's you get a lot of people in the environmental community that have a general idea of prescribed burning and how the Indians operated the landscape. But I've done 50 years of research on the project and practical experience, and most of that stuff is, I wouldn't be repeating it.
Okay.
It's just not accurate. So it's not prescribed burning versus clear cut at all. Those are two different things for two different areas.
And that was something that I didn't have the all the information on, because I was thinking the same thing. How do we know the Indians did what she called prescribed burning, when I have heard throughout, my study of history is that sometimes the Indians would burn whole forests, and a lot of it is because they would let it get away. So so when they talk about that, and she's talking about these Indians doing prescribed burned, where is the difference? What is the reality of that situation?
Well, the reality is prescribed burns were taking place in Roseburg and Corvallis and Salem areas, and they were not doing prescribed burns on the coast on that scale. On southern balds, maybe around estuaries, around riparian areas on a smaller scale, but maybe for a patch of nettles or to rejuvenate a huckleberry patch. So those are two different processes, two different groups of people, two different histories. The idea that Indians burnt down forests might be true, but it would have been true 10,000 years ago. It wasn't last week or 200 years ago, because those areas were permanently converted to grassland and oak savanna and maintained by fire. So it's just a lot of people are using these words and they don't have any practical experience. And unfortunately, they've got a lot of political power.
And yes, she comes from the world of politics, and I'm talking about Denise Bear. She does have a lot of political power, and I think the reason she created her nonprofit group for the ONC is a lot of times they like to use the influence that they had when they were in political positions to be able to featherbed their non-government organization that they're involved with now. And so I just thought it was interesting. But like I said, I love to hear the different sides to it, because you want to be able to argue those points when you get to where someone is challenging you what you're saying, because there's a lot of people who say a lot of things who are supposedly in the know, and you just really don't know, Bob. You know what I mean? It's like they say things and you look at them and you go, I don't think that's true, but I don't know what the argument against it is. So let's get back to the old growth question. What is old growth then? How would you answer that?
Oh, it's pretty easy. It's a logging term. It's not a science term. It separated what used to be called yellow fir from red fir being second growth Douglas fir, and yellow fir having a distinctly different bark and appearance, usually much, much larger, but not always. So the argument back in World War II was that a tree had to be 300, 400 years old to be old growth. They had to be highly unusual, like a 100-year-old person or something.
Right.
But Weyerhaeuser did probably the best study of old growth in the Coast Range in 1945 with the tract there in Coos Bay area, Millicoma tract, and then they had the Pillsbury tract. So about 180,000 acres. They measured it really, really closely. They took age classifications, and they termed an old growth as 191 years. The common number is 200 years for Douglas fir or cedar, or for any conifer, really, about 200 years. Unusual for an alder to become that old, or willow certainly. So old growth would vary by species, by person, by generation, but for most of the past 100 years or so, 200 years is the minimum typically. 191 is really cutting a corner, but Weyerhaeuser did that for survey reasons. At the same time, they figured the 140-year-old trees were immature second growth. Mature second growth was 150, 160, 170 years of age. And younger than that at that time, World War II, most of the mills were made to either mills for railroad ties, tie mills, where it would be small diameter trees, or they were able to handle old growth, but very few can handle that larger tree anymore. But the 150, 160-year-old, that's brand new stuff. That's all politics. That's ridiculous. Okay. 200 years is a young old growth.
And that's kind of what I thought, because I've been down to the redwoods in California, and some of those trees are really old trees. And so I thought, one of the things that the county has done on county forest land, and some of that surrounds the Elliott State Forest, they lowered the harvest from 50 years to a 40-year harvest. And some people were complaining about that, saying that they're going to be pulling off too many trees, and they're not going to be able to recoup those trees fast enough to continue doing that type of cycle. How would you answer that?
Well, it's all market. People are worried about the age of trees, but if they look at corn or grass, you have to maintain them. And 40 years, the trees are just starting to get a good growth pattern. About 50 or 60 years, they get growing really fast, and they start slowing down. And about the time they're old growth, they're neutral, and they're losing about as much volume as they're gaining per year. So they're cutting the trees down as they're just starting to grow and become much larger. But maybe that's what the market is. If the market was 10-year-old trees, then they would cut them at 10. So It's the people that are managing the forest at this time. The one complaint I would have is that on a lot of the county land and that, you have the people arguing for habitat, and typically they don't know what they're talking about. It gets really obvious because they think plantations, which are completely unusual, unprecedented type of forestry, will somehow develop into habitat over time. But plantations are planted on a grid, 300 or 400 trees an acre, whereas nature has trees growing in clumps and stands and maybe 12 or 15 or 30 trees an acre. So having them on a grid, you've got contiguous fuel, and also you create a green desert. The trees grow up, they shade out all of the flowers, shade out all the grass. You lose your deer, you lose your elk, you lose your songbirds and your butterflies, your wildflowers are all shaded out. So the people that think that that's a critical habitat, you can talk to them for about 30 seconds or 2 minutes and you realize they don't know what they're talking about on one hand. On the other hand, they've got tremendous legal power and incredible funding. So they've been able to carry the direction of these forests for a few decades now. And the result is unemployment and wildfire.
That was great information, because you look, okay, I'm from the Southwest and we got a lot of desert, not a lot of trees. And when I came here, it was almost claustrophobic. There were so many trees. I mean, just driving down the freeway, it was like, wow, this is just amazing, this forest coverage. And one of the things I did notice is that a lot of times, just like you were explaining, the canopy is so thick, there's no way animals could be surviving in that. There's no trees, or no smaller trees, like the rhodies, the other, ferns and stuff that are inside, like a natural forest. They're not inside these big, basically industrial forest, I guess would be the best term to put it. And so that was something that I was always curious about. We're really literally, if you grow stands like that, stands of trees, you're eliminating a lot of that nature that would be there if it was more of a natural forest and was, not as packed with trees, right? Is what you're saying. And that's kind of what's happening with the Elliott, because you got more trees than what you need, correct?
Yep. And what happens, you get all those fuels together. The people will argue about things like biodiversity in a conifer forest. And right away, it's like claiming you can fly or something. It doesn't sound right, but it's the law now. It's regulations. It's surprising. So you put in that contiguous canopy and it chokes out all of the biodiversity. You got mushrooms and fungus and maybe moss if there's a little bit of light, but it's dark and quiet. There's no songbirds or sounds of animals. So I had a friend who's a wildlife biologist from Utah. He's retired, he's a big game hunter. He came out to visit me. We walked in the woods a little bit, and he called it a green hell for the same reason you're describing. He was claustrophobic. He liked to see the landscape. So yes, we created a contiguous fuel so that when you've got that constant canopy coverage, like you create with the plantation or create with mismanagement through other methods, then you get these catastrophic wildfires. And they've been clearly predicted for more than 30 years for that reason. You're just building a bonfire and waiting for something to torch it.
What I just put up on the screen is a picture of the Elliott Forest. And as you can see, that looks more to me like a natural area than a lot of the and I don't even know where this was taken in the Elliott Forest, but it's incredibly beautiful up there. I've been up there and it's a treasure. It's a treasure that has to be managed, and I'm just blown away by some of the pictures that I've seen up there. And if we don't manage it, it's going to basically burn and be destroyed, isn't it?
That's the record. It burned up in the 1770s. It burned up in 1840s. It burned up in 1868. It burned up in 1879. It all blew down in 1962, and then the landslides of 1996 took out a lot more. So like all coastal forests, it's very unusual for a tree to reach 400 years of age, then only in pockets, and mostly it's second growth and snags and catastrophic fires and windstorms and landslides, and then a resilient recovery to that. So it's not at all like, unfortunately, they're teaching. They're teaching a lot of this stuff, indoctrinating our students as to critical habitat and humans as pathogens and that type of nonsense.
You know, and that was something I asked Denise Barrett, because she was talking about the younger generation and them growing up. And I said, well, isn't there kind of a dichotomy that they're being indoctrinated into what I would call environmental extremism, and they're being told that the forest is being destroyed, yet their generation, and I don't like to generalize and pick on any generation, but it seems like their generation is the most least likely to choose a job to go out and work in the forest that they're working so hard to save and keep everyone else out of. Don't you think that's kind of strange how these are the people who are saying, no, don't go into forest because, you know, or don't cut down trees because it's going to kill the forest, but yet a lot of them don't even go into the forest to find out what's happening or take the vocation that they need to get in there. Well, you know, does that kind of ring true to you? Because you work with a lot of young kids, from what I understand, or young people.
I've never seen an environmentalist in the woods. They're in courtrooms, they're on TV, they're in town. But the reason that they don't go out in the woods and look for work is, one, there's no jobs out there because they've shut it down. And two, they don't have any skills. What's happened is we've ended up with a lot of bureaucrats with studies degrees or that type of thing to fill our agencies. And the people working in the woods is based on experience and knowledge gained from being acquainted with the environment. So we used to have generations of people that would work in sawmills or cut timber or plant trees or work in the woods, build the roads. And those people have been replaced with spotted owls.
That's sad, because we're the ones who love the woods. We live in the rural area, and those people who go fishing, who go hunting, who, you know, use the woods to heat their house. Because, and this is, once again, and I don't mean to pit the city against the rural people, because that's generalizing, but it just seems like there's a lot of people who live in these bureaucracies, who live in cities, who don't know where their food comes from, who think that we hate our land, you know, and it's not true. We just have to work our land. And sometimes when you make sausage, it's not a very pleasant thing. You know what I mean? You have to cut down some trees. And they show that. And I remember back when I was in school, like I said, in the Southwest, they would show pictures of Oregon with the clear cuts, but they wouldn't pan the camera over to the right or to the left. They would just show you the clear cut, and it looked horrible. It would just look like the whole forest was devastated. But if they just moved the camera just a little bit, you would see that there were 5-year-old stands, 10-year-old stands, 20-year-old stands behind all those clear cuts. And you would think that Oregon had been cleared out, when it's actually just the opposite. It's almost like we have overgrowth in our forest now because of this lack of real, genuine involvement in nature in the rural area.
That's exactly right. And it's not just the younger generation, it's your generation too. When you say that a clear cut looks horrible, you've been indoctrinated to think that. There's no reason that a clear cut looks. I've worked in clear cuts my whole life. There are wildflowers, there's deer, there's songbirds, there's reptiles, there's berries that you can eat, wildflowers you can pick. It's just a indoctrination process that says this looks terrible. My ex-wife was from South Dakota, Black Hills, and after we lived together, started a reforestation business, a lot of years, raised some kids. And after we're together about 5 or 10 years, she was operating a women's crew for me or for us, staking and tubing trees and bud capping them to protect against animals. And she finally admitted, she said, you know, I really like the looks of a clear cut. I can see the creek, I can see the land, I can see the topography, and maybe it's because I'm nostalgic for South Dakota, but she could not understand all the vitriolic descriptions of clear cuts as being, as you were describing, a desert and ruined and so on. The fact is, it's probably about 10 years ago, probably not now because of all the wildfires, but before 2020, say, or before 2010 for sure, there were more trees in Oregon, over more acres than any other time in the last 10,000 years. That's almost as certainly accurate. The forest has spread and expanded since the elimination of Indian burning. Since the introduction of planting, it's added more stems per acre. And the encouragement of managing the land for fiber production has resulted in more trees over a larger area than ever before. The people arguing against it, again, are making political arguments. They're not based on any actual experience. But unfortunately, their experience is in the courts and in politics, and they are really good at it. They've pretty much ruined our forests and really damaged our rural communities.
Yeah, and it's really sad because they've put a lot of people who had generational jobs. You know, I've talked to great grandfathers who were loggers, and I've talked to their great grandkids who were also loggers. It just blows your mind that you meet these people out here, and this whole idea that you shouldn't be managing this. And here was a number that really blew my mind, because and this was, I found this while I was doing research on learning more about this interview. And the last interview I did with Denise Barrett is that 98.5% of Oregon has not even been developed. Only 1.5% of Oregon has been developed. And yet, if you talk to anyone in these environmental state agencies, you would think the whole entire place had an apartment and 3-car garage on it. You know what I mean? And that number, 98.5%, hasn't been developed. That's an incredible number.
Well, a lot of that is mountaintops and desert. But yeah, those people, they think the whole environment's that way because that's their whole environment. The fact is that they're describing nature as something in which humans are pathogens. And that's, I'm not going to think of a polite word, it's just stupid. But it's really destructive because our forests are burning, or people are unemployed, or schools are falling apart. The reality is nature includes people. If people, a healthy forest contains healthy people. That's a healthy environment. They're describing a healthy forest as some kind of dead trees and snags and salamanders and spotted owls, and it's stupid, but it's effective. A lot of people have made a lot of money off this. They put thousands of people out of work. They've burnt up millions of acres of land. They've killed millions of wildlife. They've polluted the air, and somehow that's natural. That's nuts. You need people out there. It's normal to have people. That's the way it's been for thousands of years. It's a evolution of the forest, an evolution of society, or collaborative events. They're not divorced from one another like they've been trying to do and effectively doing the last Endangered Species Act, basically.
Before I go on, there was something that just happened recently that I kind of have to talk about. And here's an article from the OPB, who is part of the people you're talking about. But the Oregon Forester approves controversial habitat conservation plan for state lands. And I didn't look at the numbers, but the last time I checked the HCP that they were trying to pass, it was like 70% of our forest lands would be eliminated from harvest. That just recently happened. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Cal Mukumoto is a Coos Bay resident. He's the state forester. I was really disappointed. He had a bunch of public meetings, and then it was all theater. Then he said, okay, whatever they said they're going to do, they're going to do. The HCP has been on the Elliott constantly, millions of dollars, costs the schools hundreds of millions, costs local people hundreds of jobs since 1996. They've been trying to put an HCP there. They've got an HCP on the private forest accord on private lands. And then the HCP you're talking about is on the Department of Forestry lands, now that the Elliott isn't part of the Department of Forestry anymore. So on 3 different fronts, they've got bureaucrats that you or I don't know their name, playing with the computers, cashing checks from taxpayers, telling us that science, which it pisses me off. I think I can say that on the air these days.
It's the internet. You can cuss as much as you want. I do like a drunken sailor regularly. So
I broke the habit. I used to when I worked in the woods, but I went to college and they all looked at me odd, so I had to learn to re-speak. But the point is, these are government mandates from Washington, D.C. imposed on state and private lands. They are effectively taking over control of our streams, our fish, our timber, and they're doing it with taxpayer dollars. They're removing jobs. They're removing a tax base from the counties, from the people. They are shutting us down. They've been doing it effectively for 30 years. There's no evidence they've saved a single seabird or a single hoot owl or a single coho. It's all fabricated. It's all done with computers. It's all federal zoning regulations, and it's coming on 3 different fronts. The HCP people are finally, and I've got to give a shout out to ONRI, Oregon Natural Resources Industries, and Jen Hamaker and Jeff Levy and those people. They finally, it took 15 years. They finally got the public and a few county commissioners to understand, no, this is a government takeover. This isn't about saving wildlife. This is about lawyers. So it's the environmental law industry, and there's just 3 or 4 or 5 people that have been engineering this whole thing in Oregon behind the scenes, working with a few Democrats. And you can say city people, but it's Portland and Salem and Eugene Democrats. It's not the Republican Party. The Republican Party isn't doing anything, but the Democrats have been tearing apart our rural communities, our rural industries, burning our forests with impunity almost for the last 30 years. And HCPs is a weapon of choice at this point.
And that's, you talk about the 2 different parties and the contrast between them, because the Democrats are full charge to create the forest that we talked about. That's not really beneficial to us. That's really not going to help us out. And in fact, is detrimental to the wildlife and nature itself. And the Republicans, some of them are compromising with the Democrats. So it's actually even worse. But the fact is that we just have a system that's broken. And you've got people, like you said, who are sitting behind their keyboards, who are going off of programs that in many cases are wrong. They're just complete. These are the same people who can't tell us what it's going to be like the weather in a week from now, but yet are trying to tell us what the forests are going to be like 50, 60, 100 years from now. It's just absolutely ludicrous because, whether you believe in man-made climate change, but climate change exists. Climate, from the desert to the forest, climate changes all the time, but we don't really know what it's going to do. And I think the earth revolving the sun has more to do with that than man has to do with that. And so I just don't understand how these people behind their computers think they can do it unless it's really not about the forest. It's about them somehow garnering that political power that they desire. I think that's part of the problem. And do you think why do we even have an HCP for private property, for private individuals on their land, when I would think that the individual who owns forest or owns property, a forest property, would be the best manager for that property because they actually are concerned about it? Don't you think that the HCP on private lands is just not only immoral, it's unconstitutional?
It might be constitutional. My perspective is it's immoral, but that's only because it's a government land grab. How can some guy from Washington, D.C. that claims to be a scientist, and not some guy, a whole bureau full of them, guys and girls. How can they know more about the forest than somebody that lives there, or somebody that works in it, or somebody that fishes there, or somebody that hunts there? They can't, any more than you can know about the rent relief programs in Washington, D.C. These people, the immoral part of it is they see humans as pathogens, and they are not on the side of the forest or a seabird or any of that sort. Those are just surrogates. They're after power, they're after money, they're kids climbing a tree or dressed up like an owl. They want to get their picture in the paper. They've all got different motivations. Some of them might actually think they're saving a bird or a fish.
Right.
And that's when the word, it's not stupid for those people. They've been indoctrinated. They've gotten bad information. They're just ignorant. So you've got manipulative people that are controlling the politics on this situation. They've been working at it for several decades now. You know their names, you know the process they use. They're shutting down the woods. They're shutting down the rural areas. They're burning up our forests and wildlife, and they are gaining political power and gaining funding the whole time by doing it. Whereas those of us that have been put out of work, that live in the rural communities, we're watching our schools degrade, our libraries close down, the roads shut down, the forests burn up, we're breathing smoke, and there's not good hunting or fishing anymore in a lot of those places because of these regulations. So that's the danger with an HCP. It's a federal regulation taking away private property rights, taking away state rights. They've got the navigable streams now. They want the creeks and rivers and fish and riparian areas. And it's not forest history. It's not good economics. It's political power, and it's one party. The Democrats are doing it, and the Republicans are watching them, saying, "Oh, let's do an HCP that's a 5, because that's not so bad as a 3." Or any HCP is an imposition. 40 or 50 years ago, if you'd said, "I'm from the government, I'm here to zone your property and tell you how to manage your creek," they would have been told politely once to get up the hell off the property, and a second time they might have heard a gunshot. It's just ridiculous with what's happened, how people have been indoctrinated, how they've infiltrated our schools, infiltrated our politics. And if you're over 50 years old and you've been watching this happen, it's horrifying. But there's not very many. Everybody else has moved in the last 50 years or been born in the last 50 years. They think, "Oh, this is the way things are." And it's so wonderful. We've got the Sierra Club fighting for the marble murrelet so that somebody can show me a picture of one. It's stupid.
In like you said, there are people who are coming to the same conclusion that you just described. And I know I've been fighting this. I go to the commissioners meeting and we talk about this on a regular basis. I will not allow my commissioners not to recognize it. And I've got actually our commissioners are pretty good. And that's because our county is dependent on it. But it is just mind blowing that the people who are sitting behind their computers creating these HCPs, these regulations, the zoning laws, they seem to have missed the symbiotic relationship between humans and nature. We're part of nature. We can't be separated from it. And, many of them talk about the native indigenous people who, worked with the lands and stuff. Well, they were part of that nature, and humans evolved, but we're not separated from that same nature. We're still part of that, and we have to depend on it. And that's something I will not allow any of the politicians I deal with to ever forget that. And I've testified at the Board of Forestry with Jen, in fact. And I've testified against these HCPs. And like you said, well, we try to compromise. We'll do less of an HCP. And I'm like, why do we need one at all? And that's why I asked you the question. We just don't need one. And so you're kind of working on another route, the Oregon Advocates for School Trust Lands, which is really what the Elliott Forest was supposed to originally be for. It was what the going back to the mid 1800s. That's really what the Elliott Forest was set up for. Correct? Was to help these school children and help counties set aside lands just especially for their kids.
Well, I'm on the board of advocates for school trust lands, or the Oregon Advocates for School Trust Lands. But Dave Sullivan is the person that's been leading that and just doing a wonderful job. The state was created in 1859. At that time, the federal government allocated certain properties for schools, K-12 schools, and that was part of the agreement of statehood. In 1930, Francis Elliott would have been our first state forester, and he was working with Oswald West, who was probably our best governor ever, most effective. But they said, let's create a state forest system like the national forest system. And so they created the first state forest, the Elliott, by taking scattered school, common school fund lands from around the state, traded it to the Siuslaw National Forest and to BLM on the ONC lands, and created the Elliott in 1930, Oregon's first state forest. So at that time, the Elliott was just reseeding from the 1879 fire. So it was covered with what's called reef rod or poles, young Douglas fir, even age, not commercial size. In 1930, first state forest, committed 100% to the Common School Fund. In late 50s, 58 or 59, it was transferred over to Oregon Department of Forestry because it was just becoming commercial. So if you talk about marble murrelet habitat, for most of the last 250 years, they've had snags or young second growth fir. There's no old growth. There's no marble murrelet habitat. There's a lot more fish, a lot more sunlight. But anyhow, in the late 50s, they had about 4,000 acres of old growth. The enviros will say there's 40,000 acres of old growth. That's just a flat out lie. They just made it up, promoted it, media bought it. Nobody's out there, so they don't know that they're being lied to. But no, there's about 4,000 acres. In 1959, they logged that off first so they could afford to build roads to the rest of the forest. And then in 1962, and I remember this event very well, I was in high school, we had the Columbus Day storm, and it blew down 100 million feet of 70-year-old timber and 70-year-old trees.
100 million feet. That was one hell of a storm.
That's just on the Elliott. It blew down billions on the coast. It was amazing.
Wow.
And that's why you don't have old growth out there. That's why it pisses me off that these people just make up lies about how it's critical habitat for a bird. Oh, that's crap. I mean, there's not a polite word for it. They just made it up, and they put a lot of people out of work, and a lot of forest land is burned up with LSRs and HCPs and all the other acronyms they throw at us. So anyhow, in 62, 100 million feet blew down. It was 70-year-old Douglas fir. There wasn't a market for young Douglas fir at that time. Ferris built a sawmill or reconditioned one at Lakeside. And over the next several years, they logged off a total of about 300 million feet, mostly of young second growth fir, and were able to put in a good solid road system. So it's an historic road system out there now. And so at that time, they were logging off about 50 million feet a year. The forest was growing 60 or 70 million feet a year. So it was still getting more volume, older trees as time went. And then in 1990, they saw some spotted owls out there in this second growth. And it's been downhill ever since. It's now they haven't logged anything since 2016. They've got weeds all along the creeks. Mill Creek and Coos River used to be log drives. Now they're weed patches. And they're protecting those weed patches for the fish or for an owl. It's for a lawyer or it's for a bureaucrat. Nobody's benefiting by these anti-human regulations.
Then let's see if in 2021, this was a Republican senator who put this forward, and it was an idea that was a compromise between the Republicans and the Democrats up in the House, that they wanted to do Senate Bill 1546 and turn the Elliott Forest into a research forest, and they were going to give a one-time payment of $221 million to the schools when the schools were making that, I think, almost on a yearly basis. And you wrote, and I'm going to read the first paragraph of the letter you wrote in opposition to this bill. And it says, "Thank you for this opportunity to submit our strong opposition to this costly boondoggle." I love the word boondoggle because that's what we thought of it. Our educational 501c3 nonprofit website, ORWW.org, recently celebrated its 25th year of being continuously online, making it the oldest educational website in history. Further, it has been constructed entirely by and for Oregon students and teachers with a singular focus on the scientific management of our state's natural and cultural resources. And I won't go through the whole letter, but the very ending paragraph, I love this. It says, "We strongly request that the management of the Elliott State Forest be put back in the hands of the Oregon Department of Forestry, and the mandate that the State Land Board carry out its fiduciary responsibilities as trustees of the common school lands and do what is right for our children. This boondoggle," you used the word twice, I love it, "needs to stop before more damage is done and more taxpayer dollars are wasted, in our opinion." And this is an excerpt from you back about 3 years ago, and they passed it anyway, but it has sunsetted. Tell us what's going on now with the forest, with this after SB 1546.
Okay, but first I'm going to do something I've never done before.
Okay.
I'm going to plug my book. It's called The Elliott, an anthology. It's on Amazon. It's got 2 chapters on the boondoggle. In 2019, when Oregon State was given management of the Elliott, Wayne Giesy and I had been working on another plan. This one was taken from us overnight, literally, and turned into OSU Research Forest. We had been promoting OSU Educational Forest. All of that's covered in the book. Wayne and I met Wayne Giesy, he's deceased now, with Ed Ray, president of Oregon State. He was very concerned about the Elliott and responsibilities that the state was putting on OSU to manage the Elliott. At that point, I wrote the article, I can't remember the title, Elliott Boondoggle versus the Giesy Plan, something of that nature. So that was, I wrote that in December of 2019 after meeting with the president and looked at Oregon State's plan at that time and realized this is untenable. There's no way that this can pay for itself. This is a boondoggle. That's why I put it in the title and warned Oregon State not to become involved. Then after 4 or 5 years, millions of dollars, nobody ever saw anybody from Oregon State out on the forest. It was just a isolated growing weeds and 2 guys out there managing the forest, 1 guy doing tree planting, 3 people working on it instead of 400. When President Murphy wrote a letter and said, "We're not going to be involved with the Elliott anymore. We're backing away. These carbon credits you're trying to sell, the restrictions on logging, the HCP that has never ended, it just goes on and on, has become too much. So we're going to extricate ourselves from it." So Senate Bill 1546 said they had to have the approval of Oregon State. Otherwise, the bill would sunset on January 1st of this year. So Murphy wrote her letter in November, and it sunsetted, and now that whole agreement is out the window. They still don't have an HCP. They're trying to get one. I don't know why. They're trying to log at a rate of 17 to 20 million feet a year, which won't pay for the road maintenance or the people working on it. Certainly won't give any money to the Common School Fund. That whole sordid story is in the book. It's a series of articles I wrote over a 10-year period about the Elliott, about spotted owls, marbled murrelets, and coho, and the politics involved. So it's a highly detailed story over a 7-year period, but the situation now is there's some blue sky. There's some opportunity to get the Elliott back on track, to put local people back to work, to make the forest safer, and to open it up for public, for recreation, education, and the types of research that we called for 10 years ago.
And the thing now is that it seems like this is once again is going to be a political, the forest itself is going to be a political pawn that's going to play out now. They're going to fight over it. OSU is out, but the Department of Forestry, the different agencies, they love to play back and forth with this stuff. And you are, and here's the board, here's the advisory committee that was created. Let me ask you, does this advisory committee, now that the bill has sunset, are they still have authority right now over the Elliott State Forest?
Thank God, no. But they are trying very hard to do so. Bob Sallinger and working for, he was Portland Audubon. They filed the suit, and he was running this organization through lawyer means. He's an environmental lawyer, and Jeff Huntington is now the personal advisor to the governor. No, there's a chance finally to put these people out of business and replace them with people with actual forest management experience. You're looking at a list of people there. There's a couple foresters on it, but it's mostly politicians, lawyers, and environmentalists. So they've wasted money for 5 years. They've put people out of work. They've created nothing, and now they're still trying to retain control. But we've got an opportunity to, getting back real quickly to that last quote, right, where I was saying we wanted to go back to the Department of Forestry. I would say after the Department of Forestry's bid on the HCP, the hearing they had on Thursday, I would change that to it should be put into the hands of the local businesses in the counties. Douglas and Coos County should be, they've got good talent in both counties. They should be managing the forest, and the Department of Forestry needs to be restructured. That was just an embarrassment listening to them.
That was something I've been recommending all along, and I'll get called and accused of all kind. I hate the world. I hate the trees. I hate nature, because I will say what you just said in many county commissioners meetings, that the counties itself should get back and have the state forest revert back to the counties, because we are the ones who it's inside our counties. We love that land. I would, if anyone wanted to go up there and chop down all the trees and turn it into, a Walmart, I'd be the first one to stand up against that. However, if you want to let it overgrow into the point where it's nothing but a firebomb, I'm also against that. But that's not what the counties would do, because the counties love this land. The commissioners understand that it's necessary. And I know that they would want to have those jobs back and try to put that money back into the common school fund, because that benefits all the counties. If people don't realize, the common school fund delves out or gives out the money to all 36 counties. And I think you could have two counties here, because it's Douglas County and Coos County that the forest is within. The commissioners of both those counties would want to take that money to give back to this common school fund to help their own schools. And they would want to have those forests operating and managed so that they would have the jobs that would produce the taxes that support the county itself. Right now, we're going to increase taxes. And if we had the Elliott Forest and we were actually living off of the harvest, and sharing it with the common school fund, not only would the county district, taxing district itself be benefited, but the schools would be benefited, and which would help the state overall. And I think that's, and I think you would have a better chance of getting the Giesy plan passed through both county commissions than you ever would through the Department of Forestry. And I think it would be an excellent way to push that plan. Am I off here? Do I really hate the world, or is it just the crazies in Salem?
No, you just hate the Salem Democrats.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's our land. It's where we live. It's where we do things. We were warned not to Californicate Oregon 30 or 40 years ago, and we didn't listen. So the I-5 Democrats have really done a number on the rural counties, the rural communities, the rural families, the rural schools. The Common School Fund, the I-5 Democrats changed that, so it's not the Common School Fund. It's for the best good for all, or something of that nature, which means whatever they decide is the best. And a marbled murrelet is more important than a school child, obviously, to them. Right. But that's not true, because they're not doing anything for marbled murrelets. They're just claiming that this is what marbled murrelets want, as if they've got some kind of inside communication going on there. So if the counties, local people, local businesses, they're not going to destroy their land, their hunting area. They're not going to piss off their neighbors. Right. They know the land. They've got the vehicles. We went from 1952 until 1987, when we had active management of our federal and state lands and private lands. We had one major forest fire in 35 years, the Oxbow burn in 1966 on the Smith River. So that was in Douglas County, just upriver from Reedsport. Upriver from Florence. Then in 1987, we had the Silver Complex. Then we had some more fires, and we weren't salvaging the Silver Complex. So in 1994, I was on the front cover of a national magazine saying, we're going to burn up our forests. We can't do this. If we follow the Clinton plan, we're going to have wildfires and unemployment. And so all of my predictions came true, unfortunately. They're still coming true. And so that made me unemployable. So instead of listening to somebody that knew what they were talking about, instead of listening to the local folks, it's like Norm Johnson said, they were really upsetting the forest managers. Well, of course, they were putting the forest managers out of work, and they were doing it through a stupid idea that some kind of bird is going to profit by their politics, and therefore thousands of people have to quit working, and we've got to risk wildfires. And so when we had the wildfires, as clearly predicted nationally and locally, then they said, oh, it's not us, it's global warming. Look at our computers. It's showing that the globe is warming. So now they've got computers telling us what the birds need and what the planet's doing. And all evidence is that it's all manufactured. They made it all up. It might be a bias or whatever, but I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but if I was, all the evidence is there.
Well, you and I are old enough. I was a teenager in the 70s. And when we were in school in the 70s, we were told the Earth is cooling. We're going to go into a global cooling, and we're all going to freeze to death. That was what was being pushed then. And then all of a sudden, that didn't turn out. So now it's global warming. And of course they get to climate change, which is a correct term. It's just being used improperly, because there used to be a tribe called the Annisazi back in New Mexico. And I remember on a field trip to the ruins of the Annisazi, I remember the guy who was talking said, well, the Annisazi, they grew they had such a good population that they outgrew the environment. They weren't able to replenish themselves. The food first went, and they killed too many animals, and they started starving. They reverted to cannibalism, and it was all because the area there was going from a very densely forested area to a less forested area. and more like a desert. And this is in New Mexico. And I remember listening to him and going, well, now I look back on it, that was climate change, right? There was no global warming back then. There was no man-made climate change going on. And I don't know if you've seen those ruins. They're the most incredible thing. The Pueblo Indian ruins that they build into the sides of the walls and stuff. It's just incredible stuff. If anyone ever wants to go see, what happens is that any human will suffer if there is extreme climate change, and I don't think it's predictable, to be quite honest with you. I don't know what you think on that.
Well, the climate's always changing. It irritated me when they said, oh, well, we're having freezing temperatures, so it can't be global warming. We can't use that anymore. And nuclear winter turned out to be a joke. So now we're going to call it climate change. And everybody that doesn't agree with us, we're going to call them a denier, like the Holocaust or something, which is really irritating, because nobody is denying that the climate changes. We're an adaptable species. We can live up in the polar areas and build igloos. We can live in the jungle. We can live in the desert. The Annisazi, with the climate changed, and it changed to such a degree they couldn't support that large of a population. I don't know about them turning to cannibalism. I think that might be maybe they did cannibalism, but I don't think it was out of necessity.
Well, I think a lot of civilizations turned to cannibalism because of climate change. I remember even reading about the Irish during certain times, going way back, reverted to cannibalism. It's just human nature. You get hungry, and well, that neighbor next door looks really good.
The Donner Party. I mean, you don't have to be Irish or Annisazi to get desperate, or that group that was down in South America in the plane crash. People, when they get desperate, I don't think the Annisazi got so desperate they were eating people. I would imagine if they had cannibalism, it was more of a ritualistic thing, because there's other available foods. So when people go to cannibalism, it's almost always a really desperate, unique, isolated incident, like a wagon train in the snow, or a crashed airplane, and there's absolutely no other, or a boat in the ocean, but not as far as a society or a community, unless it's some kind of ritual.
Well, they also said they moved. They went further north, I think is what was told to us. Yeah.
We're mobile and we're adaptable. And as the climate changes, or a hurricane hits or whatever, we adapt. Or if the ocean is actually moving up over the coast at 4 inches a century, or whatever the hell it is that their computers are telling them this week, we'll just walk uphill. If Florida goes underwater like they were predicting 30 years ago, those people would probably move to Tennessee or something. It's just nuts. It's like saying people are idiots, and we're going to stand there and the water's going to come up around our ankles, and we're going to go, oh no, and eat a neighbor or something. It's like, it's just stupid.
Now, you remember Bill Bradbury when he was the Secretary of State. Bill Bradbury and his wife is an environmental lawyer. I know both of them. I'm actually friends with him. I never agreed with him politically, but he'd always talk about how he would be standing on the beach here in Bandon, just waiting for the tsunami, and how we have to prepare for the tsunami and all that stuff. And I'd say, Bill, the town has been destroyed almost 3 times, at least twice, by fire. Should we really be preparing for fire instead of worrying about the tsunami that may or may not come? I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm just saying we don't know when it's going to come. We don't know where it's going to hit. And if all of us are preparing for something like this, we might get it wrong and spend a lot of money that could have been used to protect us from what I think is a bigger danger, is the fires that we have to worry about. You've met Bill, I'm sure. You know what I mean? That's just interesting that he was one of those.
Well, and you're right. The gorse that was brought into Brandon that caused the town to burn and killed lots of people. The same thing happened in Portland and Astoria, and then in lots of other towns as well. Just recently, Paradise, California, we had our own towns here in Oregon burn up during the Labor Day fires. That's the danger and what we should be looking at. The last tsunami was We know the date, thanks to the Japanese. I think it was something like December 20, 1700 at 10 o'clock p.m. or something. And there's no protection against that. When the tectonic plate goes, depending on how bad it goes, the whole coast is toast.
Right.
It probably destroyed thousands of people in 1700. And so when they found the Indian populations here in the 1740s and 1840s and 1850s, it may have still been recovering, just because it was so devastating. That a serious drop in the influx of water. There's no preparing for that. All you can do is move inland, and then so much would be destroyed as far as telecommunications, transportation, shipping, and so on, that it would be a recovery process of it'd be like recovering from an atomic bomb or something. It would just be such or a series of atomic bombs. So the preparation should be for fire, and it should be right along, and it should continue for historical reasons, practical reasons.
Right. And I often wonder, and I should ask the city manager, we now have a tsunami fire alarm, or tsunami warning alarm that goes off every week. It was like every Wednesday now we have it. And I don't know why they can't do it just once a month, but they have to do it every week on Wednesday. Scares the hell out of the tourists, scares the hell out of my dog when she was still alive. And I'm going to ask them, because I wonder if they got that rigged so if we have a fire, that thing goes off, because that, once again, that would be the important thing to me. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, fire, everybody knows when a wind's happening. The fire is going to come from the east, almost certainly, if it's a bad one. But that's what they were doing on the Elliott. They were putting Reedsport and Lakeside and North Bend, those towns, in serious and increasing danger, just because the fuel was building up to the east of those towns. And just like the Labor Day fires, it's an east wind that drives the fire. And if there's a lot of fuel, it'll go right into the coastal towns that are to the west of the Elliott.
I saw this map on the website at the website that I just put up there a few minutes ago. This is from 1868. I forget the gentleman's name who wrote this, who was describing the fires and the direction it went. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, that's Jerry Phillips' book. He wrote the history of the Elliott. He drew a map for me that's in my dissertation in 1987, I think, signed it and dated it. But this is the one that went in his book. We've learned more since then. The book was published in 94 and then republished in 98. And then we started going back through some old records, and Jerry was involved with us with Oregon websites and with the schools, and David Gould, Wayne Giesy, and we were working with a local teacher in Swauk School, Tasha Livingstone. She just got married, and I just forgot her last name. But Tasha Livingstone was a teacher at Swauk, a forestry teacher, and Jerry was going out with us, and David was going out with us with field trips for 5 or 6 years. So we were looking at the area really good. And what we learned was this fire was 1879. It reburned the 1868 fire. In 1879, the locals called it the Big Burn. But that's about the right configuration of the 1879 fire, which reburnt the 1868 fire, which reburnt the 1840s fire, which reburnt the 1770s fire. So that's why there's not a lot of old growth on the Coast Range. There's a lot of fires coming from the east, such as this one, that burn up hundreds of thousands of acres at a time, just like the Labor Day fires.
Here is another picture. I don't know if you know what that's from.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm writing about it right now. It's going in my current article, and it's in the book.
Nice.
This is the center of the Elliott. This is the Elkhorn Ranch. The foreground is a riparian zone. It's the east bank of the West Fork Millicoma, typical for that time. There's no vegetation on it because people are there. That's an Indian prairie. And all of the low gradient creeks and river sides in the Oregon Coast Range did not have bands of old trees along the banks of the rivers and HCPs protecting them. They had people swimming, drinking water, washing clothes, and gathering firewood. And so they planted an orchard in the Indian Prairie. And then the complex there were the Gould family, McClay family, a sawmill, there's a bee house, they had cattle, they ran sheep. But if you look at the hill, that tells the story. You can see old growth trees in the draw and up on the bank. There's probably 30 to 50 stems an acre. You can see they're charred, so they've been burnt at least once. Some of them obviously 2 or 3 times. The first time it just kills the foliage, kills the tree. The second time it'll scar the tree up. The third time, if they're young, you'll see stobs out there on the hillside, a lot smaller diameter. Those are trees that probably sprouted in the 1840s and burnt in 1868 or 1870. Up on the ridge line, you see young second growth trees. You don't see old growth. So the banks of the stream are clear. This is 1890. They settled there 1884. This is typical of not only the Elliott at that time. So look at your marble murrelet habitat, your spotted owl habitat. Either they flew because they're birds and relocated somewhere else, but there was about, most of the Coast Range was covered with snags and young second growth fir at that time. So you can see the ridge lines filled in with second growth. Those burnt, those are maybe 80, 100 trees an acre roughly. And so you've got pockets of old growth, seeding in second growth, all of them burning up, all of them burning again, just like a reburn like we've been having. And you've got a bare open field following the river and the creeks. And that is wildlife habitat for the last probably 8 or 10,000 years. It's not old growth. It's not marble murrelet habitat. It's not some kid's computer printout. It's not some bureaucrat telling us we need to be 280 feet from the stream edge. All of that stuff it's stupid is the politest word I can think of, except it's not stupid. Those people are on PERS plans. They're paid for by taxpayers. They want taxpayers to make up the difference now on the managing the state forest, because it's going, they're not going to have enough income, because they're going to have an HCP, and that HCP is going to produce more murrelets, which is one. It's just bullshit. It's just irritating that they continue to profit by this racket based on total fabrication. That's not critical habitat. It's a Western Oregon forest.
Right. And well, what does it look like now? After, if I took a picture of it, what does it look like now? Are there trees up over that hill now, or is it, what does it look like?
If you took a picture, it'd go out about 30 foot, because the orchard is still there. In fact, that's in my article. So the Indian Prairie has been persistent. I don't know what they're going to have to do when they put that HCP in there. But the whole hillside is covered with even age Douglas fir. I'm not sure the age of those trees. That I think if it was logged off on the Columbus Day storm, it would be a plantation. If it was not logged off, it would be mature second growth, but it's a solid canopy. So you can't take, if you took this picture, the houses would be gone and the background would be solid trees.
Wow.
Waiting for a fire.
Waiting for a fire. Here's another one. Once again, you can see the buildings in the center and the trees surrounding it. Yep. Explain this one for us.
Well, it's the same place about the same time. And if you look down right at the base there, you'll see that open prairie extends right up and around the corner. So there's your HCP, wide open, sunny sky. Now, and you see that the area is covered with burnt trees. You can extend that out about 150,000 acres. So if owls or murrelets have adapted to that site, that means they don't need old growth. They probably haven't adapted to it, maybe a few owls. They probably flew someplace else. Murrelets can fly 60 to 90 miles an hour. They spend their entire life in the ocean. They eat fish. They nest about 4 or 5 weeks a year. Some of them, a few of them in Oregon, most of them up in Alaska. Most of them lay eggs on rocks on the bare ground because they don't have trees. So the whole idea that they require old growth trees and tens of thousands of acres of them is just another, it's like 40,000 acres of old growth. They just make up a big fat lie.
Right.
They promote it to the media. They teach it in the schools, and people are ignorant, and so they're deceived.
And the picture literally shows that. I mean, it literally demonstrates exactly what you're saying. That's what no matter what computer generated program you're doing, this is history, Jack. You know what I mean? It's like, come on.
Yep. Well, one of the articles in the book is forest science versus forest history. And it makes that exact point, is we can document this history, and those computer models they use, the first test of a computer model, and I wrote about this and gave a presentation on it to a Russian group in 1992, so more than 30 years ago. If the computer model cannot predict the past, if it's not showing this condition in the past, if it's showing 400-year-old old growth and flocks of marble murrelets, then it's wrong. And so there's no way it can predict the future. Well, the fact is there's no way a computer can predict the future anyhow. But these computer models are so feeble that they can't predict the past. So now it's a multi-billion-dollar cost to the rest of us, putting people out of work, burning up our forests based on computer models that are pretty darn easy to disprove. If you can't do it with common sense and logic, you can do it with photographs. This is typical of over half of the Coast Range at that time.
You know, that's, and this is what we were, part of the way we were arguing with the Bandon Marsh as well, that they couldn't predict the way to redredge the river to make it the way it was, because you don't even know the way it was, because you know your computer model can't tell us that. And so and in fact, Bob Sallinger, is it Bob Sallinger?
Do that. Why is it that people want to make it the way it was? This is the way it was. Those people are nuts, and they're driving our whole economy. They're driving our politics. They say, "Oh, we've got to return it the way it was." The way it was a nightmare. What the hell is wrong with those people? They don't know their history. They're playing computer games, and the rest of us are paying the price for that.
Well, yeah, and I go back to the Bandon Marsh. We used to ask them, well, why would you want to go back to a swamp for the reintroduction of malaria and encephalitis? I mean, it's just going to bring mosquitoes in. And then part of the reason they got rid of the marsh was to, for vectors, to get rid of the mosquitoes. It's vector services that they did. Yeah. I was just blown away. And this is my favorite, because under those pictures, you got this picture. It says, you take away logging, grazing, and maintenance, and you get firebombs. And this is what you said in 2018. It's what you've been saying for a while. And it's true. We have the worst fires now than ever before in our state's histories. And it just blows my mind away how bad it's getting. Would you see this graph up there? Explain that graph real quick to us, because I think this is important that people understand the difference between what was and what is now.
Okay, the green line is how much trees roughly that the Elliott grows every year. The two orange lines show the period of time that Jerry Phillips, the person that drew the map you showed earlier, the actual expert on the Elliott, he just died a year or two ago, 94 years old. But that's when he was managing it. The yellow line is the average volume that they harvested when the trees were younger and smaller. That's 50 million feet a year. In 1988, they made that the target. So it's a very conservative 50 million feet a year target. The red line shows you what happened after they found spotted owls. All those little numbers there show different HCPs, show the lawsuit, and show the harvest and the jobs going down to zero. M is when in 2022, when Oregon State takes over management after the whole thing had been driven into the ground. So the important part of that graph is the area between the green line and the red line, post-spotted owl. That's how much fuel is building up every single year. So it's about 75 million feet of fuel a year. The picture you showed earlier where I called it a firebomb, that was in a national podcast, maybe the first I'd ever done, with I can't think of the name. It was Daily Caller, and a person took that quote from the podcast, and the podcast had about 50,000 viewers over time, national group, and a person put this on Facebook. I didn't even know about it. Somebody alerted me to it. The picture, he couldn't tell me where he got it, but again, there's about 50,000 people shared this and copied it and commented on it. And it made me even less employable. Nobody likes active predictions.
Hey, we lost your camera. I don't know what happened, but we can hear you perfectly fine.
Okay, good. And you've got the deal up there. So yeah, I have no idea what happened to the camera. Let's see. Maybe I can click a button here. Ah, there I am.
Hey, there you go.
Yep.
I don't know if how this was relevant. Explain this graph as well.
Oh, okay. This one, you'll see the up and down. This is what Jerry did along with that earlier map.
Okay.
This is what he did for his book. So it says Jerry Phillips, 1998, and it's the age classes in the Elliott. So the black numbers underneath show how old the trees were at that time. And then the red numbers 30 years later are what I put in. And then I also put in the Columbus Day storm, the 1879 big burn, and the 1868 Coos fire, and the old growth. There's no old growth out there, less than 1%.
Right.
The Columbus Day storm, the 79 burn, and the 1868 fire decimated the population. So Douglas fir is not shade tolerant. So when you plant trees following a prescribed burn, or when you following a windstorm or following a major fire, the age of the trees goes from however old they were, 20 years or 200 years, to 0. So you get that U-shaped pattern. And that's really normal for forests in Western Oregon for those reasons. Now, if you look at the Columbus Day storm one, and to the left of there, those trees are all plantations. Those are totally what we talked about earlier, a green desert or a green hell, low biodiversity, and they were planted specifically to grow fiber and make jobs. They are not wildlife habitat. They won't develop into wildlife habitat. That's just arrogance or ignorance on the part of the modelers. So that land should be converted to habitat if that's what those people are really serious about. So that's a lot of jobs for a lot of years. The 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, those are the ones that blew down and got salvaged. And then the larger ones, 79 and 68, the 120 to 150-year-olds, those are what were logged off after Jerry did it. So there's about 7,500 acres that you could take off the 120, 130, 140, 150 and put it to the left of the 30 plus that would be less than 30 years of age now, 5 to 30, going back to 94. So those columns would be a little bit shorter, and there would be another column to the left. But other than that, that shows the age classes. It shows the lack of old growth. The 120 to 150-year-old stuff used to be prime, but now we don't have sawmills that can handle it anymore. It's debatable whether we can even sell it locally. The younger stuff, 40 to 60-year-old, planted to cut, it should be liquidated. And if they want to make habitat, turn it into habitat. If they want to make cultural landscape patterns, turn it into cultural landscape patterns. Or if they want to plant trees to make fiber for future sawmills, like we did before, they can do that. But definitely that's prime for management for whatever reason.
So either way, all three of those, whether they wanted to do what you were talking about with the having it a riparian area or having it a cultural area, or just having it as a forest that produces wood, all of it means you have to have logging, no
Yep.
matter what. It all has to be logged.
Yep. Or
Wow,
it'll burn down or blow down.
yeah, because and there's no old growth according to the evidence that you've documented, because either the storms have taken it out, the fires have taken it out, and really logging is the least detrimental thing to do, because if you want old growth, you could groom the area so that you could actually have plants that grow to 300 years.
Yeah, about 300 years is kind of the upper limit, but the ones you see there at 160, 170, 180, those could be cultivated in the old growth. Those are a fairly small part of the population there. The 120 to 150 could be commercially thinned. The 70 to 80 to 90, 100, again, very small populations. Those could be cultivated for old growth. And then the plantations should be liquidated and transformed into something more desirable.
This is incredible. This is really incredible stuff. Hey, I've got to go to my one of my sponsors. I'm going to bring him on here. We're going to quickly. We'll get back to talking about this, because I got a lot more questions, because what you just told me is just mind blowing. I mean, this really should be. I hope people are watching this, and I hope they understand how wrong the bureaucrats are. The bureaucrats are so wrong, and anyone who's listening to this, who are seeing the pictures, who are watching the graphs, there's no way, no computer model could convince you otherwise. But I got to bring Tim on here. He's from Tom and Gigs. Hey, Tim, how you doing? Are you listening to this stuff? This is incredible.
Well, a little bit, but it's so noisy in the shop, it's hard to get it all in. So I haven't had a chance to really digest a whole lot of it.
Well, it's just amazing. Bob's sitting here telling us about the history of the Elliott Forest and how really there was no old growth, because it's been destroyed by storms. It's been destroyed by fire. And if we don't log it, we'll never have old growth. In fact, logging really sounds like the only way you could manicure the land so that you could have the old growth trees that the environmentalists want. And yet that's the antithesis of what they're trying to do with no logging whatsoever in these HCP plans. It's just incredible.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they
I would like to try a Marlboro Merlet or a Spotted Owl. I hear they're delicious.
I'm telling you. Well, I mean, the barbed owl is eating the spotted owl, so they don't like the barbed owl now, because barbed owl is natural to our area. The spotted owl, from what I understand, is not. But they both are here, so that's the way it is. They're more important than human beings' lives, so it's the way it goes.
The barred owl and the spotted owl, barred owls aren't eating them; they're having sex with them and producing young. There's more difference between a Swede and a pygmy than there is between a barred owl and a spotted owl. They're two different races of hoot owl, and it's just all part of their computer games and the misinformation they're giving us. That maybe the barred owl is more aggressive, but when we were in school, we were taught that survival of the fittest, and that the owl is serving a niche in the ecological makeup of things. Okay, so you want the best niche in there possible, that would be the barred owl. But what we're looking at is a bunch of burnt out ground, and there's the barred owl is supposed to have moved in the since the 1970s or something. But there's good indication that the spotted owl did the same thing in the 1880s, that they moved in from other areas because there wasn't any habitat here at that time.
Right. Ain't going to be much left here either after it's all burned up. I mean, it's just, the BLM and the Forest Service done a really good job of creating forest fires. If they allow them to go in there and thin the forest, limb them up, grow timber instead of these, what I would call pecker poles for lumber, and clean up the slash and trash, get the, well, I shouldn't say the homeless are criminals, but give them a shovel and an axe and whatever it takes to get them out in the woods, and that's where they're going to work. And if you don't want to do that, then no more freebies from the state unless you want to do something for it. There's lots of labor out here on the streets that I see walking around. If you're able to get in the garbage can and dig your head deep, 5 feet deep in the garbage can or a dumpster, you can sure in the heck get out there and clean up the forest and get paid for it. So that'd be twofold: less fires, less crap, and less dependence on the system of these people.
And more tax revenue for our schools and libraries and roads and police.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the way it used to be. It used to be illegal to be camped out on a sidewalk. And when I started in reforestation in the late 60s, a lot of the people that they got were winos in the early days. And then it shifted to us because we could have the long hair and still get a job if we could do the work. So, yeah, there's a lot of work out there. We've got millions of young men coming across the southern border doing migrant labor work. And we've replaced a lot of our local businesses, a lot of workers with marble muralettes and migrant laborers. And we can see the results. Everything's burning up as predicted, and rural communities are going broke.
Right.
I got on the sidewalks.
Yeah. I don't know if either one. I know she won't mind me saying her name. Loma Wharton's a real big time activist in this sort of thing, and she's talking about over in, I think, in Lakeview, where they're getting grants for forestry and stuff, but they're taking and mismanaging and misappropriating these funds to put them in the general fund, supposedly, and distributing and doing whatever they want when they're specified to go to forest management and that sort of thing. So that's a complete whole nother little hornet's nest. It sounds like might something want to check out, Rob.
No, I had contacted Loma about that. That's exactly. In fact, she had sent me some information on that they were taking the grants that were supposed to be going into the forest management, putting it into the general fund, and then they were just diddling it away on whatever pet project they had. And I thought that's quite interesting. When in reality, we wouldn't even need those grants if it was an operational forest. You would have the operational forest pay for itself, and what of those grants are going for is probably the homeless, who probably wouldn't be homeless if they had more jobs to fund feed themselves. It's just amazing how this cycle, it affects so many things, and that's what I was talking about Bob about, is that we have a symbiotic relationship with the forest, and without it, we're dying. And if you notice, because they're allowing the forest to die, isn't it kind of strange that our rural communities are dying as well? I don't know.
Well, between the fishermen and the loggers, or it was for those guys, and doctors come and go all the time. So there's really nobody here with a family wage jobs is hard to come by in this county and in Oregon in general, I guess, unless you just happen to be so lucky. But it's amazing when those fishermen and loggers are out of work, how down our business goes. It's amazing the volume that those people bring in for your business. And, I wouldn't want to work for nothing either. Those guys work really hard for their money and they earn every penny. So, but all these windmill things, all this crapola that isn't going to do a dang thing, but cost people money and headache and heartache and destroy the ocean probably more than it will do anything else. And you gotta start logging. If you don't, it's just going to burn. So, and then what isn't it when it burns, they won't even allow them to go in and harvest what's on the ground. So that's really, isn't that ridiculous? They had
an environmental lawyer in California that said, okay, now that the trees are burnt, we're not going to salvage them and create sawmill jobs. We've got a blackback woodpecker to worry about. And that's not a joke. Blackback woodpeckers make it so we can't harvest the snags. Marble muralets make it so we can't log the trees. It's the Elliott alone, you were talking about logging jobs. When they were getting 50 million feet a year off the Elliott, that's over 400 jobs. That's just the Elliott. You add on the other state forests, you add on the federal forests, and the loss of jobs in Western Oregon the last 30 years through the Endangered Species Act is in the tens of thousands. And the losses to the communities and to the schools is hundreds of millions. The total cost of society is in the billions. So we're spending tax money to have people put out fires that don't even live in the community.
Right.
We pay tax money to have illegal aliens come in and plant trees and send the money back to Guatemala or Mexico. That's been going on for a few decades. And local people are living on sidewalks. It's idiotic. It's hard to believe. I don't know if you've lived in Oregon for over 50 years, but watching this happen has been really a sad, irritating process.
Oh, yeah.
Heartbreaking. It's
And the
heartbreaking.
people that do own land out there, they can't do anything with their land. I remember dealing with LCDC back in the early 80s. I've been here since 1958. I was born here, so sometimes I'm proud of it and sometimes I'm not because it's politics, but still you see things come and go like the mills, and now it's a casino. And we've what GP now, they're not running anymore. It's kind of sad to see, but something's got to change. We got to change the state to red and get some common sense people back in office and start doing some real work in this town or in this county and state. But where did the federal government ever get the authority to own land or create national forests? If you look all those laws up, it's a bunch of baloney.
Well, Tim, we were talking about that. Elliott is a state forest, and I agree with you with the federal lands. They own 54% of the state, and that should revert back to the counties as well. But we were, Bob was talking about, how he would change the statement where he said that it should go back to the state forestry agency, that it should just go back to the counties, because the counties, which Elliott is in Douglas and Coos County, we would manage it better than anyone else because we
Absolutely.
are directly impacted by everything that goes on there, and we could contribute to the state economy overall. And,
Absolutely.
these common sense answers, with the Giesy plan, and I guarantee you the commissioners would look at the Giesy plan and they would see, because people are going to want that recreation. They're going to want the cultural habitat to remain the same, the cultural values that we get off the land, and the fact that it would be a managing forest that you could pull lumber and timber off of that land and make money on it. It's a win-win-win proposition, and they're just not going to let us do it. It's just nuts, Tim.
Well, it's how much we have to put up with. I guess we had a civil war once, right? We got tired of the British, didn't we?
We got tired of the British. The Civil War didn't turn out too well for anyone. So
no, it's a bad deal. But
except for the black people, they worked out well, and I'm glad, because slavery is bad, but this is a form of slavery in itself, because now we're becoming dependent on the very people who are trying to tell us they're helping us.
Yeah. The heck with the American people, and the only ones that have rights or any kind of a benefit at all to do anything in this country, or if you're illegal, you're good to go. Black, you might as well say black and white's the same. And I'm a racist bone in my body. I don't care who you are. Just be an American. Right. Be a patriot. Want to come to this country and do something good for the country, not be a parasite upon the system. It's just so ridiculous. I get upset when I think about it. But I see all these people walking around in here with more money in their pockets and fancy phones and all this stuff, and I'm sitting there scraping by trying to pay the bills, and just frustrating.
They're on their smartphone while they're pushing their shopping cart of junk down the street, and it's like, well, what are you doing? Calling your financial advisor? Really? Why do you? So what's going on at Tom and Gigs, man?
the other thing, what was I going to say? Like the Agenda 21 thing and what they got Agenda 30 and whatever, all this junk that basically surrounds everything with a barrier where you can't set foot in any of this property, let alone log it. You can't even go in there to hunt or fish or hike or do nothing. They want you completely 86'd out of there, put in your little 15-minute city and be happy. You own nothing. I don't think that's going to work real good with most people that live in this part. And that's why rural America now is under attack. You've heard about that on the national news. I mean, rural America, the farmers, everybody, they're the bad guys now. We're the terrorists. Well, I'm happy to join that group. Thank you very much. I'm proud to wear that badge if that's the case. But anyway, the shop here is doing great. We're busy, me and Austin. He's kind of a little under the weather today, but he's toughing it out. He's getting it done. And Josh is talking to folks on the phone and getting things fixed up, and it just takes time doing stuff. We're not as fast as we are when we have everybody here at once, but we do what we can. It's hard to find a really good tech anymore. So if there is any of you out there there's actually say that you're actually a technician, not just a mechanic, give us a call. We have a job opening probably here. So anyway, other than that, give us a call down here at the shop, 541-888-4660. 135 South Showman in Coos Bay. If you have any RC car needs or wants or birthday gifts or just about anything for your pickup or car, give us a call and we'll try to help you out.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it.
Other
You're
than
a
that,
good man.
yeah, well, MAGA to everybody, and God bless America and this man right here for his knowledge, and it's pretty awesome. And I see your new digs in the back. It looks pretty neat. You're almost getting up there with Joe Rogan.
I'm telling you, I know.
I'm going to get you a neon sign.
That's what Bill told me. I need a neon sign. That's urban renewal. I went to the city and got an urban renewal loan, and it only cost me $200, but I took the other $25,000 and I'm going to go spend it on hookers and coke in Las Vegas. So
oh man, you're styling now. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Stays in Vegas. Yeah. You take care, man.
Okay, bud. Talk to you later. Thank you.
Right.
Take care.
You know, Bob, that's why I love having my sponsors. They are just salt of the earth people. We lost you, Bob. You still there?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. I think you're hitting a button or something, because I get a slash on the camera, and then I click on it, and then it comes back on.
That's wild. I'll figure it out.
Maybe
here. I'll get it down. So we were talking about the graph. We were going back to the graph, and boy, this isn't very. Let's see. Well, that doesn't come in very well, does it? Let's see if the other one does. No, there's the Elliott State Forest timber volume going back to the 1930s, harvested 1940, 2020, 21 with and without fire. Explain this chart to us.
Okay, I'm not familiar with who did this, but it looks accurate. We were looking at the earlier pictures. The 1930 is when they created the Elliott, and it had 4,000 acres of old growth, and everything else was young second growth Douglas fir. So that's the reason the volume is so small. The harvested area was around the perimeter of the Elliott. There were some very early logging shows in there. A guy named Mark Woods or Mick Woods or Mike Woods, maybe. He's blamed with starting the 1951 Vincent fire, which was the last major one until 1987. But that's why the harvest there is small, just a few small Jippo loggers around the perimeter. Then the 2021, that is after all that logging. That's after 50 million feet a year. And it's the trees are growing, they're getting larger, the roads are in, they're being protected that way. And then the 2100 without fire, that's like having a drought without rain. There's always fire wherever people are. That's a projection, that's a computer projection. That would be without fire, without logging, under what they would call ideal circumstances, and everybody else would call a real waste of resources and an increasing risk of fire the more volume you get. Right. 2100 with fire, that would be right back to the 1930 level. Same thing. It all burns up. It's all gone. And so that's an interesting graph. Do you know where that came from?
That was on the website. That was on the same page where I got your other pictures from, and it was down a little bit lower. And in fact, the wording that I had was talking about the different years of harvest and how they changed. But this is like you said, if we don't go harvest it, it's just going to burn. And it's not a matter of if it's going to burn, it's a matter of when it's going to burn, correct?
Yep. That's the record. There's no Coast Range forest. There's no Douglas fir forest. that won't burn after a certain period of time. On the coast, it's highly unusual for trees to become in excess of 400 years of age because of these regular fires and windstorms. Some other areas, protected pockets, can get 700 or 1,000 years old, but they're isolated. There's just a few stems, or usually really ratty trees that have survived that long. They're really atypical. So this graph here shows again, it would be the U-shaped pattern that we looked at earlier. If you extended it out another century or two, you get a large volume, it burns up or bugs kill it, or it blows over, and then you're starting with really young trees again, and then it builds up. So you get the U-shaped pattern.
One of the gentlemen who I pay attention to, because I think he's very like-minded. His name is Nick Smith. You familiar with Nick Smith? He does healthy forests, healthy communities.
Yes, I've only met him once, but we've corresponded a little bit, and I followed along with what he's done through the years.
He just wrote he just sent out his newsletter, and this is from his last newsletter. It says the Forest Service's latest analysis sheds more light on true threats to mature and old growth forest. Just 2 days before the public comment period closed on the Forest Service's notice of intent on old growth forest, the government released its analysis of threats to mature and old growth forests on federal lands. The analysis confirmed previous reports that wildfire, insects, and disease, not logging, pose the most significant threat to older forest. Since 2000, wildfires resulted in a decrease of an estimated 2.57 million acres of mature and 712,000 acres of old growth forest on national forest systems and BLM lands. Insects and disease cause a decrease of 1.86 million acres of mature and 182,000 acres of old growth. Does that sound about right?
It depends what they're calling old growth, but yeah, the numbers are about right. It's when we were logging regularly, there was less timber taken over decades than what's been going on since they stopped the logging on the federal lands. So we're losing more and all the old growth and all the so-called critical habitat that they've made up. The LSRs, the Clinton plan, it's all resulted. This isn't new information. This is what was predicted clearly 30 years ago.
Wow.
That, hey, look at if you do this passive management, it's going to burn up. Bugs are going to kill it. It's not going to work the way you're describing. And think about it. Even if it worked the way they're describing, it's bullshit. What's it supposed to be? A large millions of acres of no humans, no human activity, and we've got flocks of spotted owls and marble murrelets that are able to survive because of our sacrifice. I mean, the whole racket from the beginning. That's why in HCP there's not a good choice of which ACP to take. Every one of them is bad. It's like, do you want to fall to your death at 50 feet or 500 feet? No, you don't want to fall to your death. So why we're even going down that road in the first place is concerning.
One of the things that I got a picture of, and this is an extremist environmentalist group that was out there. And of course, they don't want anyone to cut down anything. And I don't know if you've run across these people in the forest. You're there quite a bit. And the thing is I'm willing to bet a lot of these people live in the city somewhere. They probably live in Salem. They probably live in Portland or Eugene. And they come out here once again, spreading their ideology, and a lot of kids buy into it because it looks cool. This is the cool thing. It was like when we were at college, those kids out, the hot chicks with the signs that said, "Save the whales." Well, we wanted to be with the hot chicks, so we were all save the whales, not realizing what we were even saying. And I think in many regards, that a lot of young people look at these young people and they think that because of peer pressure, because they just look cool, that this is what we want to aspire to be. When the opposite is true, we want people to look like lumberjacks, and we want them to go in there and manage the forest so we can keep it for this generation. What are we going to do, Bob?
Well, Paul Bunyan was a hero when we were kids, and then in the 1980s he turned into a forest scraper or something. These kids here, that picture was taken only a mile or two away from the ones we were looking at earlier. You said, what's it look like today? That's what it looks like. That's close to the Elkhorn Ranch. Those kids are from University of Oregon, most of them from Eugene. I've never seen any of them out in the woods. There's one local kid, Sam Schwartz, that was joining in with them. But
I know Sam.
These are Sam is the unusual local person. We took some tours with him. He's a good guy, but his mom is a real activist. But these kids here, they're not out in the woods. They don't know it. They couldn't plant trees or cut timber for a living. They're working, probably doing computer games somewhere now. They've got probably kids, but this was just a fad for a while. It was it was like Save the Whales, or in my generation, Stop the Vietnam War. They're activists. They're doing something that they think was exciting or interesting, or probably there's a pretty girl involved and a couple guys came along for that reason. It's hard to say what the motivations are, but they were effective. They led to a lawsuit. Portland Audubon did it. Some of the names we looked at earlier, Bob Sallinger, those people engineered it and got everything to shut down. And then they engineered it so they got on the advisory committee, and then they engineered that so that there's only 17 million feet a year that are scheduled to be cut, but we're not even cutting that much because they're not forest managers. They don't have any forest management experience. Forest scientists aren't forest managers. Environmentalists aren't forest managers. You need experienced people, local people that know the forest that they're managing, that have experience doing it. And those are the people that have been cut out of the picture. The local people, the tribes have been cut out, but that's a different issue. And the people that were experienced, that knew what they were doing, that hired local people, that kept the money local, have all been cast aside. And then we got nitwits like this out there claiming to save the owl or the fish or something. Their social life, something's involved there. Who knows what it is? But yeah, that's not a very large percentage of the Oregon population, and it's not even Coos County probably. It's probably Wayne County.
No, I know the kids here, and our kids are really good. They understand everything you're saying, and I think many of them have a right to be angry with us, and not with you and me, but angry with the government and the situation they've created, because they've created a no-win situation for them where, they either have to join those kids working on computers when there could be very viable jobs out in the forest that they actually love, and they're being denied that. And it's just absolutely heartbreaking, Bob, because like you said, they're really just trying to keep humans out of it. Like somehow we are not even a piece of the puzzle in nature. And that in itself, we're going to face the consequences for. There was a lawsuit that I think you wanted to talk about. What was that involving?
Well, that was what you showed earlier with the Oregon Advocates for School Trust Lands filed against Department of State lands because of the Common School Fund trust obligation wasn't being met. That $220 million, that's a whole different story. I'll tell people, buy my book, and it's got the whole story in there. But the management of the forest and the mismanagement of the forest dates back to the lawsuit, and that's the thing that young people today don't know it used to be, I was an athlete in high school. A lot of the people we worked with in the woods were athletes in high school, got good paying jobs, cutting timber, setting choker, planting trees, building roads. All those jobs disappeared. They've been replaced with marble muralettes and migrant crews. I've been accused of being a racist because I say all this money is going to illegal aliens in my industry, reforestation, and they're sending it overseas. And they say, well, that's racism. Well, Mexico and Guatemala aren't races. We had Mexican workers on our crew. They were local residents. That's the key. If it's local businesses, local people that know the woods, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, that should be done, especially if they're trying to save the old growth. So if they knew what they were talking about, they would want people out there actively managing the old growth so that it doesn't burn out, so it doesn't get hit by bugs. But that's not what they're doing. And that's a problem. A lot of young kids, they don't know those jobs. Those have been gone for 30 years. So their generation is, they know a few people like the man that was talking earlier, that the loggers come in when they're working. They should be working year round. There's way more work out there than we can handle with the current workforce. If we got illegal aliens coming in, give them not a green card, give them citizenship and make them live locally and rent out a local place and buy their car locally and eat their food in a local restaurant. And that's how we used to do it. And we didn't have fires and we had nice schools and parks. So it's sad and irritating to see what's happened, but it's reversible, but it's going to require some major changes.
So where is that lawsuit at? How has that progressed to the courts?
Yeah, I kind of want to track there. So
no, it was good. It was good.
it was just it's up for appeal right now. Probably the local judge said what you've been saying and people said earlier, that this isn't a legal issue. It's a political issue. This is politics. So the judge was saying he could not, because of executive privilege, the governor and those people can mismanage our land with impunity. So even though it's a trust obligation, the legislation's done some wiggle room with the language so that they have the legal ability to be doing just what they've been doing. So his thing was, this has happened. You've documented it. The common school fund's been screwed out of hundreds of millions of dollars. The local people have been incrementally put out of work. But it's a political issue and it needs to be settled at the ballot box rather than in a court of law. So we're looking at that very closely right now. That decision just came down a couple of weeks ago. Looking at it very closely right now and probably going to appeal it to a next higher level of court. So if you got listeners out there that want to help fund a lawyer or help fund education, we've got two nonprofits that are trying to make a difference.
I'll try to find the page that had the website, but let's see.
You had it up there earlier. The Oregon Advocates for School Trust Lands. The other one would be the ORW, and the other one is ORWW.org, and it's got two Elliott websites on it. It's got a YouTube channel with tours of the Elliott, with interviews with Jerry and David, with the actual experts before they died. It's got oral histories that are on file, 25 hours of oral histories while touring the Elliott with the experts, all transcribed and at OSU archives. We've got that online. So there's a significant amount of information, and Department of State Lands and Oregon State had millions of dollars in 5 years, and somehow they never seem to discover that all that work's already been done and is being done by Southwest Oregon Community College forestry students. Tasha Livingstone Davison, that's the last name I couldn't remember before. Her classes, we worked with them for 6 years. So we were the actual experts on the Elliott. Those students are the actual experts, and they avoid us like the plague. They don't want any expertise out there. They've got a computer that tells the future for them and that they get paid to play with.
But isn't that the opposite of having a research forest? I mean,
What they
damn.
call research and science now is computer games.
Oh,
Yeah, it
geez.
used to be field research meant you went out in the field, you took measurements, you documented what you were doing. I practice science and they avoid me. So
Yeah.
they changed the meaning of the words. A conservationist now is a preservationist, whereas it used to mean wise use. And old growth now is the same as a 25 or 30-year-old person, calling them an elderly citizen. They've changed the meaning of the words, and so now science is computer printouts, and it's just what Eisenhower warned us about in 1969. Don't let the government, large computers, take over policy, and that's just what we've done.
You've written several books, and there were a couple that really piqued my interest. I want to go get. Just tell us, and I saw them on Amazon. Your books are on Amazon. If people tell us what books you've written and where people can get them if they don't want to go on Amazon, because sometimes people don't like that, and I'm not one of them, but there are people out there who don't like Amazon. So give us a little tip on that.
Well, right now, if they don't like Amazon, they can't buy my books. So this is for
Okay.
people that aren't afraid to use Amazon.
Where do you live, Bob? We're coming to your house. We're going to buy a book.
They keep saying that. Well, bring me over a book, and it's like, I'm not in the book distribution business. But I've done about 50 or 60 book length monographs, oral histories, and those types of things, and reports. The ones that are for sale, I did my dissertation. That if somebody wants the academic version of what we've been talking about, that's my book on Oregon Coast Range catastrophic fire history and Indian burning patterns. So if people want to know about Indian burning, then that book is pretty tedious. It's more of a reference book. It turned out 2 recent anthologies, one on the Elliott, that's the one I mentioned, and one on wildfire history of Western Oregon. I've got 2 more in the works, one on reforestation. So after it's burnt up or after it's logged, what do you do next? And the last one's on spotted owls, which tells the whole sordid history of computer games taking over for tree planters and timber fallers. I've got one other one, fine art, which means nudity in the woods, that I did collaborated with a friend. It was my first fiction in 47 years and her first fiction in 27 years. And we thought it would sell, and maybe it would. And we put it out right when the pandemic started. So
interesting.
Yep. But what we did with that was we traveled around Oregon to all of these painted hills and waterfalls and things that people don't see. And we told the Greek story of Persephone as if it took place in Oregon. So it was a fine arts book, which means there's nudity in it. And we thought, well, we can sell paperbacks or photographs or books and make some money because these forestry books don't make any money. But we were wrong on that. So, but those are the main books at Amazon. Those 4 or 5 of them.
And yeah, like I said, anyone who's interested, go on Amazon, just type in Dr. Bob Zybach, and you will find these books. They pop right up. It's and they're really good price, very informative. Anything you want to tell us before I get you out of here? And by the way, thank you so much for giving me a couple hours. This has been enlightening, let me tell you.
Well, I enjoy being the expert, and especially on the Elliott, because there's some truth to that. So I've enjoyed the discussion, and I think we've covered a lot of good points, and hopefully some of your listeners are paying attention, and hopefully with efforts like this, we can make a difference and put people back to work and save our old growth and make a safe environment for spotted owls and marble murrelets, but mostly for school kids and local families.
You got it. Thank you, Bob. And you have a wonderful day, and I'll get you back on here because I think this is a lot of information that we need to review and find out what's going forward, because that Elliott Forest, you know what's going to happen. They're going to be fighting over this, and you're going to be in the middle of it. So I'm going to want to hear what happens. Okay.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
All right, Bob. Talk to you later. You take care. All right. that was Bob Zybach, and that was 2 very incredible hours. I've got another person who's backstage right now, and that's Diane. Diane, how you doing? You're on your phone.
Really good. I'm on my phone. You couldn't catch me on the computer for some reason. You didn't see me back there.
That was weird.
Dr.
Turn your
Zybach.
phone sideways. Can you turn your phone sideways? Does that? No, it doesn't. Oh, there it goes. See, it's a much
There we
better.
go.
See
There
there?
we go.
Yeah.
Okay, we're trying. Let's go there. Anyway, yeah, I wanted everybody to remember that you need to sign up to be a PCP. And it's really easy. You can go to the Coos website. And if you live in Bandon, you're in precinct number 16. If you're in Myrtle Point, you're in precinct 13. Coquille, number 12. Coos Bay 6, North Bend 4, Lakeside 1. That is so easy. And just go online and become a PCP.
And they can do this at the
because you only have,
county clerk's office.
you can go to
I'm
the
sorry,
clerk's
they can do
office,
this-
or you can just go to the website. I did it while I was backstage for the show today. It just takes a minute. It's super easy. And then you get a chance to make a difference in the county. We have got to change our Republican Party. We
Let me
cannot
see.
have people that elect. What?
Let me see if I can share my screen here. Share screen. Let me see if I can do this. State of Oregon. Okay. And I'm going to share that. And there it is, if you can see that. Let's see. If you go to the Secretary of State of Oregon, that's sos.oregon.gov. Right there on voting and elections, you go right there and you click that. That will take you to this area here, and just scroll down a little bit more where it says manuals, forms, and tutorials. That you see that again, manual forms. And then you click on that. And then all you got to do is where it says election forms right there, you click on that. And it says SELs. Those are the SELs that you filed. There's SEL 105 because I went there earlier today. And this is the online form that you can fill out. And it says upon submission, this form will be sent to the. So if you are watching this right now, go to the Secretary of State's website, fill out this form and submit it, and it will go to your county clerk. Is that cool or what?
So easy.
Did you see all that? Yeah. That's the first time I've done that. I've never done that live. So that was very interesting.
Really good. So Rob
Are you
is precinct 16. So I hope you'll fill that out after the show today.
I will. Well, I can't. I haven't been a Republican for 180 days.
Well, that's too bad. You'll have to do it again for the general in November.
I will do that in the general in November, because I'm encouraging everyone to fill out the PCP forms, because we got to make change. We got to make change. Oh, and by the way, let's see. I got someone's putting up a question. Oregon Outlaw 2000 says, who decides if you can be one? You know who decides? The voters. That form goes to the county clerk. It goes on the ballot, and your neighbors will decide if you're going to be a precinct captain. And here's the great thing, Oregon Outlaw, is that most of the precincts are not taken for the Republican Party. So if you're in the Republican Party, or even if you're in the Democrat Party and you've been one in the party for 180 days, your neighbors will vote on whether to make you a PCP. And normally it takes like 10 votes. I've seen people win as few as 10 votes. It doesn't take a lot, because there's probably not anyone in your precinct captain position, and you'll be perfect for it. I think you'd be perfect for it. Oregon Outlaw, we'll definitely need you there.
It's very important. I didn't realize myself how important it was until we tried to make some changes in the Republican Party. When things started going sideways, and we see that there's issues within the organization itself, you can't do anything unless you're a PCP. If you are a PCP, you can vote and you can
Right.
make some changes. And we have the weakest chair in the state. So we definitely need to get behind
Yes.
this idea and become PCPs. Let's do something about this. Let's not just let it keep happening.
Right. Right. We just had a situation where we tried to get some advisory questions on the ballot. And the Democrat Party is so organized, they were able to get 50 people there and 2 former representatives, a Senator, Arnie Roblin, and a former House of Representative, Kathy McEwen. Both of them showed up with about 50, 60 people. And there was no Republicans, maybe six tops. And that's including me. There were no Republicans, and I was ashamed of the Republican Party and the lack of leadership that Rod Schilling was showing by not having people at that meeting to organize and make sure that they put those ballot questions on the ballot, because they're just questions. Why can't we
Right.
ask questions, Diane?
Right. Because he's not organized enough to even go to the Board of Commissioners meetings. He doesn't go to the Chamber of Commerce meetings. He thinks going to the church over on the east side with 20 people is going to promote this party, and he's dead wrong. He doesn't do the things that need to be done as far as being the chair of Coos County. That's all there is to it. He needs to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he definitely needs to go, and we need to get fresh blood in there. And we need several people out on that, the Coos County Republican Party committee. We need to get a couple of them out. And there's a couple of people out there who I know want to change this county, who want to change this state. And the only way you can change policy is if you get active. It's just not about getting candidates elected, because even if you got candidates elected in the House and the Senate, they're still going to be the minority, and they're not going to be able to change policy. And you don't want them compromising like David Brock Smith. You don't want them compromising with the Democrats, because then you get Senate bills like the one that he put out in 2021 that turned over the Elliott Forest over to the Democrats.
Yeah.
Turned it into a research forest. That's what David Brock Smith did for us. And luckily that has sunsetted because the bill failed, much like David Brock Smith.
Thank
much
goodness.
like
We hope to sunset him and Rod Schilling at the same time. Let's just change things. Let's do things better. We don't have to have immorality and people that cheat with Democrats. We don't need that. And if they can't see the difference of value and honesty, they don't need to be in a position as the chair. That's all there is to it. We expect to have issues as we go along, but I certainly never expected to have a chair that would think it's okay to take $150,000 from a Democrat from San Francisco with ties to communist China. This is not okay. And anybody that stands up and says, oh, but he's a great guy, is not paying attention. Doesn't matter whether you're a great guy or not. If you are spreading influence and your money in the legislature and it comes from Democrat parties' pockets, you're not a Republican. We don't do those kind of things, and this has to stop. And if you don't understand that, you need to resign, because you don't have the ethics that are necessary to be in leadership, period.
Diane, I think your phone has a better microphone than your computer. It really
Do you think
is clear.
so?
Yeah, that is really clear. You're going to have to get a stand
really hard
for
to
your
hold this phone.
I was going to say, it's hard to hold the phone because, you can see you shaking. Right. So you need to get a tripod or some kind of stand for your phone that you can set it up against something and do these interviews, because your voice is coming through great on that thing. So are you ready for this weekend? I'm excited.
This weekend is going to be a blast. It really is.
Yes.
It's not every day that I am able to speak to owners who are creating AI platforms. And in the last month, I have been involved with people that are so brilliant and have wonderful filtering systems that are so angry about what's going on in our country. And they really want to make a difference. They want to change things. They want to do things better. And they're not willing to accept what we have going on right now, especially the rhinos that we've got in the Senate. They have to go. We cannot expect our businesses to take a loss every single year while we play with pretend policies. We need to do things that are within capitalism to make things better. We can't go on with these social games. They're losing money. We're losing our police. And
Yep.
I, for one, do not want the homeless to be the only industry in the state of Oregon.
Right. Right. We've got so many natural resources here, and their biggest idea is to kill those natural resources by putting a bunch of windmills off our coast, or killing the population by making them all dependent on the government. And that's the last thing that you need people to be, is dependent on the government. It's just slavery. And the thing is that the people you're talking about, these people behind the scenes that we're working with, oh, my camera froze. They want to help us change Oregon because they know Oregon is what the rest of the country is going towards. And they don't want to see the rest of the country. They don't want to see where they live in Texas or in Idaho or in other places. They don't want to see that turned into an Oregon state, or like Oregon or like California. So that's why they're trying to help us change Oregon right here, right now, because they know the Republican Party is ineffective with the leadership it has. So we have to change the leadership in the party. And we also have to create organizations that are going to work parallel to the party to actually function to change policy. And that's
Right.
what's great about these people. I love it. I love this stuff.
I'm really excited. This is the first time I've been excited about what's going on in politics since I moved to Coos County.
Yeah, me too.
There is absolutely no reason why they can't be completely successful. What they're bringing in is amazing. And we're darn lucky to be with these guys and to be able to know what is going on. And I'm so happy, Rob, that you and I broke the story about David Brock Smith. You know, at first
Yep.
it was pretty horrible, okay, because you guys treated us like we did something wrong. And I'm sorry, but Rob and I did nothing other than bring the information to light. David Brock Smith did things wrong. We didn't do anything wrong. And when we brought it forth, we did not lie. It was 100%. The situation is exactly what he did and exactly what we said he did. And his misinformation, I'd like him to tell us exactly. David, tell us. Where is this misinformation? Because the Secretary of State might want to know and the county clerks might want to know, because that's where we got our information. Anybody that says that we lied about David Brock Smith hasn't done the research. Anybody that says 3375 is a good bill is absolutely insane. David
Right.
Brock
They
Smith
either haven't read it or
windmills
they're
here.
lying. Right.
They're lying. They're lying. Anybody that says he's smart and he's a statesman doesn't understand what he's done to this state. And you better start reading some bills because you really are sorely uninformed.
Right. And that's what it takes. And there's no way anyone could read all of those bills. Well, maybe, I don't know. But, I've read many of the bills that have been passed, some of the important ones. And there's been a lot of bad bills. There was a new windmill bill out that just increased the call areas for the windmills, and Boomer Wright just voted for it. And I wonder what his story is going to be. But I got news for you. Michaela, I just talked to her a couple of days ago, and she's going to be at the Republican Central Committee meeting on Saturday, the 16th, and she's going to introduce an amendment to their bylaws that says that they cannot use the words misinformation, disinformation. I forget the third one that they use, but they can't use those three words anymore to go after fellow Republicans. That is what the type of words that Democrats use, that misinformation crap, because it means nothing. Either call me a liar and prove me a liar, but don't say it's misinformation. That's so weaselly.
I love that about Michaela. You know, she's one step ahead
Yeah.
all the time. And she's really, really a valuable member of the Republican Party. I would hope that Don Powers pays attention to what's going on because, Don has so much energy and he can change the Republican Party. If he gets in, we're going to have another wonderful, wonderful thing to celebrate.
Right.
And I think it can only happen with his leadership. I don't think we can take another term with Solomon Yu. I don't think it's possible.
No. And hopefully the Trump team is watching, because Solomon Yu back in 2016 was trying to use the rules that they used against Ron Paul against Trump to keep him from being able to get into office. And it's just sad what they're doing. Is there anything else you want to tell us before we get you out of here?
Well, that's about it right now. But we will be doing some live broadcasts with Rob Taylor and I at the convention at the Mill Casino. And we look forward to giving you some updates on what's going on and who's going to be there, because we do have some fun people flying in, and it's going to be really exciting. So I look forward to telling you all about it with you, Rob, this weekend.
All right. I'm excited too. The anticipation is just too much to take, because it's a long time coming, and I think we're going to have a good time. So
I know. Great.
Yeah. All right. Well, you take care, Diane. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
All right. And I always appreciate when she comes on the show. It's always good to have friends. It's always good to have friends who have your back. I've got a lot of good friends out there. Who have my back. And when you get in times of trouble, and you get canceled, it's hard to know who's going to get your back, who's going to have your back, I got your six is the term that they use in the military. Well, that's what I'm interested in, is being with people who are loyal to me. I'm always going to be loyal to them. And, just because we find out something about our representatives, I don't care if they're friends of yours or mine. I don't care if they're relatives of yours or mine. If they're doing something wrong, we have to expose them. We have to expose the local politicians, the state politicians, and the federal politicians when they're doing wrong. And you know why? Because you probably have children or grandchildren. And if you do have children or grandchildren, you want to protect their rights. You want to protect them from bad policies. And that's why we do this. We do this to change the policy. We don't care who's in office. We just want them to make things better for us, not worse. And that's what they're doing. They're making things way worse. For all of you who live in Coos County, we have some budget meetings going on. One Adams. What they're going to be doing all week long is budget meetings. On Wednesday at 9 o'clock, the work session is going to be budget, including surveyor, clerk, assessor, finance, tax, county council, BOC, various funds. That's on Wednesday. On Thursday, 9 o'clock, same time, work session, budget, only if needed. And Friday is going to be a meeting only if needed. So Thursday and Friday are tentative meetings. But Tuesday and Wednesday, they are definitely meeting in the Owen buildings at 9 o'clock. Excuse me. And these budget meetings are the most important meetings. That's where the skeletons come out. In fact, the commissioners, even though they're good guys most of the time, some of the times they're good guys, they don't really want you going to those budget meetings, because you're going to really see some really scary stuff. Those budget meetings can be really scary. And I highly recommend that if you want the truth, you go to those budget meetings and you see what they're talking about, because we've got a budget crunch happening if the tax levy doesn't pass. I'm not voting for it. I'm not supporting. I'm taxed enough already. And that may cause a huge problem if a lot of you out there, the majority of the voters, don't vote for this tax levy. Well, then we're going to have some hard financial times at the county level. And you know what? That may be something we have to face, because I'm tired of paying all these taxes and not getting anything for my money. The school taxes, how ridiculous. They're indoctrinating our kids. They're not educating the kids. And the library tax, they turned the library into a homeless shelter. I don't want to give any more welfare to these drug derelicts. I'm tired of that crap. And so I'm just tired of the federal taxes. I mean, almost half our money, almost half our money goes to the federal government. Why? Did you know $220 million is sucked out of Coos County every year to go to the federal government, and they're $35 trillion in debt. How can they be getting that much money from all these counties and all these states across this country, and yet they still can't balance their budget? Well, maybe it's because, they're spending it on all that crack and hookers that Hunter Biden is smoking. Maybe they're sending it to the Ukraine. Maybe they're sending it to Israel. Maybe they're spending it on all these woke agendas. They're doing all of the above. And I'm personally a little damn sick of it, and I'm even more disgusted that I'm having to pay for it. So we got to do something about that, folks. So I hope you go to those meetings. It's very important, because if you don't do something about this, the leftists will. The leftists, they love going to these meetings. They love doing those kinds of things. And, it's not going to end. It's not going to end in a very pleasant way. And I want to thank all the sponsors who sponsor me. Yeah, that's right. I still got sponsors. I got canceled off the radio, and yet I still got sponsors. Can you imagine that? So I must be doing something right. But if you enjoy the show, go and see my sponsors. Hire them for your business, because they do an excellent job. Matt Holman was just on here. We had a winner for Where's 3H Tree Service. Mr. Smith, congratulations. You, I heard, were the winner for this week's Where's 3H Tree Service. It was $100 this week. We're going to play next week. It's probably only going to be $50 next week, but you could be the winner. And all you got to do if you need some trees cut down is call 3H Tree Service at 541-294-1800. That's once again 541-294-1800. And Matt Holman and the rest of the guys, well, they can help you out. Take those trees out with surgical precision. Tom and Giggs, we just had Tim on the show. Tim was great. He's like a firefly. I mean, he's out there just boom, 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 he just really was great. And I love having him on when I have my guests on, because he really adds so much with his passion about what's happening in our area. I believe he was born in Coos County. I'll have to ask him, but he's lived in Coos County most of his life. He has a business here. He's concerned. He's concerned about what's going to happen, because it's in his vested interest to be concerned. And that's why, if you want to go and get your car repaired, you need a new muffler, you need an RC car, you need a tonneau cover, go see Tim at Tom and Giggs. That's the place to go. If you're also interested in protecting your rights, I would highly recommend donating to Oregon Firearms Federation. Don't give to the local Republican Party, because, well, they're not doing the right things. No, they're not doing the right things. So don't give any money to the local Republican Party, and certainly don't give it to the candidates who are not representing us. Most of the incumbents here, let's see, Boomer Wright, I wouldn't give him a damn dime. Dick Anderson, well, that's what he can get, Dick. That's all I care about, Dick Anderson. I had to apologize for somebody for asking them to support Dick after he stabbed us in the back so many times up there in the Senate. So don't give him any money. Court Boyce, he's just an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's like a blind man driving a car. And then you got David Brock Smith, who's playing at three-dimensional chess. In other words, he's selling out to the Democrats and the Chinese probably. So I wouldn't give money to any of our candidates, none of the incumbents. I'm not going to vote for them. I'm not going to support them. And you need to think about that. If you are supporting them, ask yourself why. Why am I supporting this candidate? Why am I supporting this party? I would stop that. I would work to become a PCP, and I would work to change the party from within to make it a better party, so that people do want to give you money, so that people do want to support our candidates, because we want good candidates. And I don't care if they have an R after the name. I just want them to uphold the Constitution. I want maximum freedom and minimum government. If we can find candidates like that, I don't care what they call themselves. We need to support those candidates, and we need to change the local and state Republican Party. And one of the people who's working to protect our Second Amendment rights is Kevin Sterrett for the Oregon Firearms Federation. He's doing a hell of a job. He's the only no-compromise gun organization in the state. And you can see that website right there, www.oregonfirearms.org. I highly recommend that if you got some extra money, you give it to them because Kevin's going to use it to fight for your Second Amendment rights. And if you want to practice those Second Amendment rights, I would recommend also that you can go check out the Abandoned Gun Club. They don't have a rifle range, but they do have a trap, a 5-stand trap where you can go and shoot your shotgun. And they have a pistol range. I would get highly precision. I would try to get more precise with using your guns. You know, you want to practice that precision. You want to be able to protect yourself because you may have to at some point in time. We've got a lot of, well, for any lack of a better word, a bunch of dirtbag illegal aliens coming across the border who want what you got. That's why they're here. They're taking it, and even if they're not taking it directly from us, they're taking it from the government. You work so hard for your jobs. You work so hard to put your kids in school, and you work so hard to live a good quality life. And here these people are breaking the law by coming to this country, invading this country, and someday they may try to take it from you because they want what you have. And if they can't get it through, Uncle Joe Biden, who's just giving away everything we own, well, they're going to come and take it from you directly. And that's why you need to get, better with defending yourself. So I highly recommend the Abandoned Gun Club. And I also recommend the Tioga Sports Park, the Tioga Sports Park Association. It's the gun range right next to the dump, the county dump right on 101. And if you want to find out more, you can get a map at the tiogasportspark.org website. They have a map there that will tell you how to get to their park, and I highly recommend it because, once again, they have a rifle range. Bandon doesn't have a rifle range, but they got a 5-trap stand where you can practice your shotguns, but then you take your rifles over to the Tioga Sports Park and become a member there as well. Both of these things, you can become members at both gun clubs because why? They're fairly cheap. It's fairly cheap to become a member. So go check them out. I couldn't recommend them any more than I'm doing right now because I think these organizations, they're needed because a lot of you just may not be in practice with your guns. And like I said, somebody's going to take it from you. If it ain't the dirtbag drug derelicts that the state is sponsoring, if it isn't the illegal aliens who are coming over the border that the state is sponsoring, I really don't know. I don't know if you need any more warning than that these people, there's a lot of not good people out there. And so you got to learn to protect yourself. I've got a lot of guests coming on. We're going to get, I talked to Adam Palmer, who put on that, was the host for that town hall that was put on last week. We're going to try to get him back on to give us a little bit of update and what was happening. And we'll be talking to him. Joel Skousen. I got Joel Skousen coming on here. We're going to be talking about his candidacy in the Constitution Party and some of the things that he sees going on. I'm sure he's going to tell us a lot about those illegal aliens coming across the border. Yeah, Joel Skousen, his uncle wrote that book, The Naked Communist. It was a book I read when I was a teenager. Blew my mind back then, and every now and then I have to pick the book up and read it again, or parts of it, because it's so apt to what's going on right now. It would just amazing. But Joel Skousen is going to be on. Trevor Loudon, we're going to have him on too. He's one of those people who analyzes geopolitical affairs. He's a real astute at what's going on in our federal politics, and we're going to have him on the show with many, many other people. There's going to be a lot of people that I've talked to who want to get on here. They're starting to see that the podcast is taking off, and I'm all in, man. I'm all in. This is what I want to do. I want to bring information to you and share it with you, and I hope you feel the same way. But until the next time I see you, folks, carry on, Coos County. Carry on.